After Sarah Palin leaves the governorship of Alaska, apparently her emails are of deep and vital interest to the public. If you remember, all of the media went up to Alaska to rifle through them. But it seems that with the Obama administration, there is also an ideological method behind what gets shown to the public and what doesn't. So, for example, when Obama was first elected, we all had to see these torture memos, as the left called them, and, you know, having trials of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in New York City. This was all supposed to be on the public stage, but then you're telling me there's stuff that is hidden from the public, which is really important, like Obamacare.
Right. I have found them releasing information, as has Christian Adams. If you recall, J. Christian Adams, he quit after the new Black Panther case scandal from the Department of Justice. He went in and he found that they were giving information to friends almost same-day service. And they were never even responding to conservative media outlets that were making requests. Now, that's disparate treatment. We've also got them, I found a case where they'll sit on request until it's politically expedient to release the information. And then they will release it, even though they had clearly been stonewalling it, but they found at this moment it suited their purposes because they needed to buck the Greens up or something.
You know, Chris, I'm still a bit confused here because what are the legal ramifications? Does the government really have to release this? Can they take as much time as they want to release it? You know, when Bloomberg came out with that study showing that 19 of the 20 agencies didn't get back to them about out-of-town travel expenses. I mean, that seems pretty easy. I mean, this is how much we spend for out-of-town travel. What's the law here? And can anybody be held accountable for this?
In reverse order, not really. Because it's several states, for example, Virginia has just doubled the fine for a knowing violation of that state's FOIA, or the Commonwealth FOIA. There's no real accountability in the federal government for violating the accountability statute. The law says 20 days, and then you can take a 10-day extension for unusual circumstances, which they call every request. And then they ignore it, assuming that you, A, won't persist and appeal, and B, if you do, you won't sue, because it takes time, it takes money, it's lawyers' guns and money, it's lawyers' money and time, lawyers' years and money to get these things.
The government always has the lawyers, by the way. That's
Isn't the challenge, though, that as atrocious as these things are, that pressure for real change, for getting the Obama administration to be transparent, is going to have to come from the public? And the hard part there, I think, is actually engaging them on it. As much as we submit FOIA requests and Bloomberg does studies, I'm not sure that every American is paying attention to these things, and they're worried about getting a job, paying their mortgage. Right. And how do we engage the public so that they can put pressure on the
Chris actually has a chapter in the book, this is a perfect segue, where he says you can file FOIA requests, can't you? You can actually, any private citizen can decide you're going to file a FOIA. How difficult is that? We have a very active audience. They're very involved in politics. They really want to know what's going on. I think they can do this, right?
Some agencies have made this more difficult than it should be, and some agencies have made it easy. But it's up to first a career FOIA officer, and then I've found there are political commissars. I've been told this by career FOIA officers. This administration installed political commissars in offices like the Department of Energy to give a weekly briefing by the FOIA officers. What are people asking for? And then everything now has to go out through the Office of General Counsel, who will sit on things if it's troubling. Now, they've politicized this. Anita Dunn's husband was put in charge of this. They've politicized a typically non-political information dissemination function that the Supreme Court said is a necessary condition to a free democratic society. So what do? The last two chapters are a how-to, because it's far more difficult to politicize this if the audience is asking. A, under the law, they have to just publish on their website frequently requested information. Request the good stuff. Everybody get out there. And B, with the commissars there serving as the bottleneck, it's much more difficult to politicize this if a lot of people are getting engaged, because you're dealing at first with people who are not inherently predisposed to sitting on the stonewalling, and you're going to have career FOIA officers causing problems. I had several speak to me openly.
You've certainly ruffled some feathers, though, right? People have called folks like yourself FOIA criminals, if I recall, in this book, just because they want access to this publicly, or what should be publicly available information. I mean, there's a backlash from some of these government officials.
That was the head of EPA, and here's why. Transparency was great when it was about the other guy. But now that they're in charge of the institutions that they said must be subject to transparency, because this is public authority, this is government authority, taxpayer money, it could be abused. Louis Brandeis, Woodrow Wilson, they all demanded transparency until they're in charge of all the institutions, including taxpayer-funded academia. And they decided, you know what, now that we're in charge, we really don't need this anymore. In fact, transparency is a threat. Why is it a threat? You're dealing with people who view information as a way to intimidate. Kim Strassel wrote a couple of great columns on the Journal about Obama's enemies list. If you participate in the public policy debate, why we must know everything about you, And by that they mean if you support a group that opposes Obama. If you actually participate by, say, voting, we don't need to know anything about you. That would be harassment if I asked you for a driver's license or something. The right is far too precious to do anything to actually protect it. But if you speak out in a way that they don't like, we have to know everything about you because you're involved. Meanwhile, they're insisting that public employees deserve privacy as they spend our money to obtain more power and money from us.